Hello and welcome to Rotted Reviews, and it is day 5 of October, Patron Appreciation Month, and for those select few out there that have actually supported me above and beyond just liking and subscribing and actually click that Patreon link, I wanted to go a little bit above and beyond for them. So I queried them and I asked them, what movie do you want me to review? As long as it's horror and as long as I've never reviewed it, it's fair game. So put something in front of me that you want the world to hear about, put something in front of me that you want to hurt me with, whatever the case, make your suggestion. And today's entry is brought to us by Scott Daniels, a longtime friend of mine, way before even this channel started. Thank you very much, Scotty, for all of your support during this time. And thank you for the recommendation of 2007's Dead Silence. Now, this movie was the first feature-length directorial effort of James Wan after his breakout hit of Saw. And I'm going to be discussing it in a fairly spoiler-free fashion. At some point, though, I will shift into full spoiler mode and discuss this freely, but I'll give a little bit of a warning and a heads up before that happens. Now, I kind of want to make two things very clear from the get-go here. One, I do not consider this to be a great movie. Two, I think this film gets shit on way too much, and definitely way too hard. I've heard folks out there call this the worst horror movie they've ever seen, and for the people that truly stand by that opinion, I just have one thing to say. Either tone down the hyperbole, or watch some worse fucking movies, because if this is the worst you've ever seen, your bar is way too high. Expose yourself to more horror. I promise you, there's worse out there. But again, I don't think that this is a terrible movie. I honestly don't even think that this is a bad movie. In the same way that I don't consider a hot fudge sundae to be a bad food item. It's just whether or not you're trying to have it for dessert or you're trying to have it as entree main course does kind of make a little bit of a difference. And make no mistake, Dead Silence is dessert. Not a whole lot of meat on this one, not a whole lot of sustenance, not a whole lot of vitamins in this one. But it is a lot of fun, and damn is it a treat if you allow yourself to just be open to shutting your brain off a little bit and enjoying the roller coaster ride that it is. Yes, it has flaws aplenty, and I will be getting into a bunch of those, especially in the spoiler era territory down the road here. But I did have fun with it, and ultimately, I think that there is a place for just having movies that you can just have fun with. And all too often, we're in the search for just the most epic cinematic experience that sometimes we do forget to have fun. And honestly, I just think that that's a damn shame when that happens. So this movie gets rolling by introducing us to the character of Generic Guy and his wife, and they're having a little bit of generic banter with their generic marriage and their generic apartment. All of a sudden, they're interrupted by a knock at the door and a mysterious package left there, which happens to be a ventriloquist dummy. No sender, no postage, no nothing, just his name on it. Generic Guy. And then he steps out for some takeout food, and during that time where he's out of the apartment, his wife mysteriously gets murdered in a horrific, bloody, ventriloquist fashion. She's just puttering around the apartment. All of a sudden, all the sounds, one by one, of ambient tea kettles and stereos and so forth, just slowly shut off, until there's just dead silence. So then at that point, it becomes a mystery of tracking down where this doll came from, happens to be Generic Guy's generic hometown, and why this is happening. And it all kind of gets tied in with this childhood lore of Mary Shaw. There's even a poem about it, a childhood sing-song poem, Beware the Stare of Mary Shaw, so on and so forth. And the rest of the movie kind of kicks off from there as far as just trying to figure out what this mystery is, what the rules of engagement are with whatever assailant is haunting or attacking them. Believe me, I could pick this movie apart till the cows come home with storyline structure, character conflict, character motivation, just all sorts of things, and to a certain degree I'm going to in just a little bit here, but strictly from a 5-mile, would you watch this, would you enjoy this if you did watch it kind of standpoint, it really doesn't matter a whole lot. This is simply dessert. This is the movie that you put on. It has a flimsy backstory, a flimsy mystery. It's just entertaining enough. It has some interesting jump scares. Yes, if the jump scares actively annoy you, then this might be one to pass on because it is heavy with them. But if you actually enjoy kind of sitting on the edge of your seat waiting for this movie to kind of jump out at you and pop out and give you a good little, oh geez, this actually delivers pretty well, and not with just bad jump scares either, not with fake out jump scares, but with actually legitimate, interesting scares to it. I don't want to keep repeating myself too awful much, and I also don't want to wind up getting on a soapbox, but that's pretty much where I'm coming from with this, is it was fun. And in light of how much fun it was, I honestly just don't think that breaking it apart is going to do it too much of a service when I readily admit that there's just not a lot there beyond fun. Sometimes we just want an hour and a half of a horror movie equivalent of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. And for that, I honestly can't think of a better recommendation than 2007's Dead Silence. So I think that should about wrap up everything that I wanted to talk about on a spoiler-free fashion with this. I am going to get into spoilers, and I am going to rip this movie a new one just for the sake of actually doing due diligence and being a film critic for a moment. But that ends the spoiler-free portion of this. Let's go ahead and get into the spoiler-filled portion. So if you haven't seen this movie, or if you care about spoilers, consider yourself warned. Okay, spoilers abound. Here we go. So I think honestly one of my big problems with this movie from a structural standpoint was, well, a generic guy. Okay. Not just the character, the notion of the fact that I don't know his name. I don't even care to look it up. I got my iPad right here and I could look it up. I just don't care. It's generic guy, whatever. That's the thing, is everything in this was one-dimensional, from the characters to the setting. Nothing about this had any level beyond just surface value. This is what it is. Accept it and move on. Don't believe me? Well then, answer me this. What was generic guy's job? What was generic guy's wife's job? What was the nature of this town prior to the whole shutdown of everything happening? It doesn't explain anything, and it doesn't need to, because they're basically just existing for the sake of the movie. That's it. They don't have a job. They don't have any friends. They don't have any prospects, hobbies, weekend getaways. They don't exist outside of this movie. That's all they're there for. And it does make the movie feel a little bit hollow. This is what kind of turns it into dessert and prevents it from elevating itself into a more substantial meal, if you just follow the metaphor. Same thing with the town. We're talking about this town. He's driving through. We see shuttered windows and so forth, but we don't actually really talk to anybody of any real substance or value, or see any examples of cross streets and bustling areas and so forth, or get introduced to, I don't know, it almost felt like a geographical representation of generic guy. Like it didn't exist except for within the construct of this movie. That's the only reason these streets were there, those buildings were there, and anything about this theater or this lore happened to be there. Clearly, generic guy came from generic rich family. How did the rich family get its riches? What was the industry that happened here? What was the town built upon, just in terms of its survival? Why did that stop? Just because of Mary Shaw? Well, that seems a little unlikely, unless we were developing a pattern of people just dying left and right and all over the place by the hundreds, which you'd think would spark a little bit more of an outside interest if hundreds and hundreds of people in this town were being turned into tongues torn out ventriloquist folks. Just saying. So again, this only exists within the construct of this movie. Further than that, I think that it's a good mark of a good director to have a unique style, have a unique voice, have a unique tone, but at the same time, try new things and don't repeat yourself too awful much. And in this case, there was just a whole lot of James Wan in this movie. Right down to the minor key, but still very peppy tempo, kind of tension music going there. And let's talk about the very end, and let's do ourselves just a big old favor and not talk about the ridiculousness of the actual ending, because dessert. Okay, dessert. So let's just take that, let's put it in, right. But at the same time, we do have to kind of consider that this followed the same formula as Saw, in that at the very end, we all of a sudden are now presented with a very fast cut clip montage set to that music reaching its crescendo peak as we get introduced to scenes that we had seen previously, but now with the slightly bit of new information, that slight new twist, that slight new angle, and we get to see more of what we had already seen in light of this new information, until finally, Tagline, dead. I couldn't help but notice those parallels there, and it did feel just a wee bit repetitious in light of how many times I've seen Saw. But even so, taking all of these flaws, and more that I haven't even mentioned there, up to and including definitely how the Baldwin cop was just a ludicrous character at face value, and again, it doesn't matter. Because I'll still watch it, and I'll still have fun doing so. I've watched it 3 times now, and I will say that it doesn't quite have the same impact, quite the same punch as the first time I watched it, but I still have fun. It's still a good movie to watch with friends, turn your brains off, laugh at the screen, and just have a good time. And if anybody tells you out there that that thing that you're trying to have a good time with is the worst thing in the world and you should feel bad about enjoying it, well, that doesn't sound like the kind of negativity I'd want in my life. So, that should about do it. That's my review of 2007's Dead Silence. Thank you, Scott Daniels, for bringing that to my attention. Thank you for suggesting it. And thank you for watching this. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe. And if you want to support me further, my Patreon link is below in the description. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.